Hey, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. An attorney and an accountant walk into a bar. I'm John. I'm the attorney, and my buddy here.
I'm Kent, and I'm the accountant.
What are we talking about today, Kent?
Leaving California.
Why would you want to do such a thing?
Good question. Let's get into it.
A lot of people are doing it, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm. All right, John, tonight I got something special in store. Tonight we're going to put away our whiskey glasses, and we're going to replace them with something special. As you know, I love, or at least I have a curiosity and a passion for tiki. And so I came across a mug that I think is apropos for this situation. Tiki mugs come in all shapes and forms. This one is called The Lawyer.
Oh, how embarrassing.
And it's been passed down to us by other attorneys. So every owner, since its creation, has been attorneys.
Wow. That's
I'm going to join you in this drink.
it's very interesting, but quite not functional.
Function is not the purpose of tiki, right? Some of the entertainment of it is, and the joyous nature of crafting drinks is what I find really fun about it, and the history behind the drinks. So tonight, grab all the accoutrement. John, I even brought umbrellas, so you know I'm serious business.
Nutmeg?
Hell yeah.
All right.
Okay. For the sake of brevity on this, I did the pre-mix of the alcohol piece, but this specific mix is called an Angostura Colada, and it is not a traditional tiki drink. It was created about 10 years ago by, I think, a famous bartender in the tiki world, Zach Oberyn, and it's inspired by something called the Trinidad Sour. So I don't know if you've ever heard or tried that, but it's a rum-based drink, and I think it's apropos because it's spicy and bold in flavor, and it's sweet, and then it dries out and finishes bitter, not unlike yourself.
I finish bitter, do I?
But to be festive...
Did my wife tell on me?
Huh? No, she did not. So to commemorate the occasion, just like myself, I'd like to bequeath upon you a festive accoutrement, which is a
pocket square.
Call it a tiki-ish pocket square.
Okay, well, I'm going to swap it out for my pocket square then. How about that?
To make that a little fun.
All right, here we go.
So in this mixture, John, that I'll swing up, are you
How's
familiar?
that?
Looks good.
All right.
I like it. In this mixture, are you familiar with the Angostura bitters?
I am.
Now, normally that's a dash.
Just
But
a dash.
This, it's not. It's measured in the ounceage. So it creates but I can see your face. But there's quite a surprising finish to this. So the other pieces are lime juice, Coco Lopez, pineapple juice, and aged Jamaican rum. So one of the things that we're going to do in this...
It doesn't even come out of the bottle.
It does, because this is the Coco Lopez. Give me a second. I'm going to fight it. Oh, there it is.
I think you should have rehearsed that.
No rehearsal needed. This is what the B-roll's for, John.
Oh, there we go. Oh, whoa. Look at that.
Okay. The other key component to tiki drinks is crushed ice. Look at that. All right. So here's what we're going to do. Give ourselves a little bit of ice. If we were really thinking ahead, we could have made this a whole ASMR thing.
Oh, that would have been a good idea.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, Tom Cruise and Bartender.
That's for next time, team.
You're
Take notes. ASMR.
You're going to chuck that thing in the air and bounce it
wish.
off your head. And there we go.
Get a good shake. All right. Move this over to the side. So let's give you a nice taste.
I think you gave me the whole thing.
I gave you a good portion of it. Here's the good news. It's actually not even half filled. But what you do in it is you add more crushed ice. That's the key. Just add ice until we get to where you need to be.
Next time, can I just get this filled with whiskey?
You know what? I don't think you'll make it past the first take if we
Well,
do
not
that.
if I drink it all at once.
And John, we're not quite done. We're gonna go full tiki. So the top of this is a little bit of nutmeg. So I'm gonna make sure we finish this off right.
Can't you? I've been planning this all week.
Looks beautiful. And then, to make sure you know we're festive, umbrellas must be had. Any proper tiki drink? Full umbrella, John.
Okay, well, I am thoroughly embarrassed.
Hold on.
Oh, it smells great.
And a
Thank
squeezy
you,
straw.
sir. Thank you.
Okay.
So what are you going to have? Oh, you're going to have another one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. I have my glass clear, so that way we can try and see the awesome color that it is as well once it's fully mocked up into a cocktail. Yep, here we go. Now that the ice is done with. I'm not sure how this looks on camera, Michael, but we'll have to plan this out because I like making tiki drinks, so maybe there'll be a way to us to incorporate this fun stuff. I don't think the seal on this is right.
So we're going to replace that really bad, like, intro OB roll that we have from the original?
The
Is that
original?
the idea?
Yeah, we can look at to see what we want to do with that.
Well, I'm wondering if that's what you're doing all this for, is that,
Yeah.
So I should be, like, smiling and going, ha, ha, ha.
Well, a couple of these, and we'll all be smiling. Look at that! Look at that beauty, John.
I can't even begin to describe what that looks like yet.
Looks like magic is the word. The word is magic, John. Okay.
I was thinking more like sewage.
Oh, that's not in the tiki. That's not in the tiki spirit. Well, I broke that umbrella.
I don't have my aloha
I
there.
brought backup umbrellas, John. Backup umbrellas. Only a well-prepared man builds.
You know, there's a
backup umbrellas.
case I'm really, really interested in looking at.
What's that?
Do you know that the Hawaiian Supreme Court just announced that Hawaii will not be following the Supreme Court's interpretation of the Second Amendment because to do so would not be in the spirit of aloha?
I believe it.
Oh, I do
believe
too.
But do you really need the Second Amendment in Hawaii?
I
That's
don't
the
know.
question. That's for another day, another topic. Look at this
I've never
beautiful
been
nutmeg.
robbed there, so I suppose not.
I don't know if the bar is baseline criminality, but
Well, that's not what the Second Amendment's about at all, but that's probably not a topic that we're going to touch on.
not today at least. Bam. All right.
All right. Shall
Now
we
we're ready.
partake?
Well, let's do a quick take.
Okay.
Here we
Clink.
go.
Here we go.
Anchors to bitters.
And
It's called the Angostura Colada.
it develops very interestingly. It's a
Aha.
very interesting start and a very different finish.
I love it. What I like
I'm
about
sure it's an instant headache if you drink enough of it.
if you drink the entire thing. Now, the ingredient I swapped out that this is normally made with is an aged Jamaican rum. But not just any rum. Now, I Frankenstein this. The rum I used is actually a Jamaican rum made in Thailand. And it's Jamaican rum from a French-run distillery on Koh Samui that makes aged Jamaican rum. Take a whiff of this.
Mm,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Should I like take a big slug out of this for B-roll?
You know,
Directly out of the bottle?
so I think that this is fun. I took a moped to the distillery one time and met the owners and the distilled pots. And they're manufacturing Jamaican rum in an island in Thailand. So maybe not your regular, but it has a really awesome taste to it. And to me, it tastes really good. So I think it was a good addition to this drink that we have. So thanks for indulging me. This is again a little tiki
I
cocktail
think this
hour.
is very fun. The lawyer. So, Kent, I feel like it's almost a banal conversation now. People leaving California. We all hear about it. Fox News certainly beats that drum. You know, it's the regulations, it's the cost of living. People are leaving. The middle class is leaving, all these things. And I think, we know that. But you and I went to a very interesting meeting the other day, and we discovered what I felt was something very disturbing, which is what sort of led us to want to have this conversation, is it's not just people leaving California. Now the capital's leaving California. And what that's going to look like and what that's going to mean, who knows?
You're right. I think a lot of folks see the splashy headlines. You have Tesla moving out to Texas with Elon Musk tweeting, I'm not going to own any more homes in California, and selling off $62 million worth of property. And moving that over to Texas. You got Oracle, Hewlett Packard, and even in our backyard, we had Toyota move its headquarters out to Texas as well.
Yep.
And the exodus of people is one thing, and I think there's been a lot of statistics that track. There's a lot of people leaving, and there's also a lot of people entering. This is why we have in other episodes discussed the housing crisis in California. There wouldn't be a crisis if there were not the bodies here. But I think you hit a really, really interesting point. It starts to create economic shifts when large capital investments start to leave. And since we delve in the world of real estate, that discussion, that meeting that we had really talked about and hit the point home that investment is leaving California for a lot of economic, jurisdictional, and political reasons.
Well, let's talk about what exactly it was we heard so our listeners know specifically what we're talking about. And that's that we were at a conference where the speakers and certainly all the attendees were very well-heeled and large investors in multifamily residential. So we're talking apartment buildings that are, 100 units plus.
Mm-hmm.
Big stuff. And it was somewhat universally understood and agreed that, one, they were not investing any more money in California, period. Certain places in California they were actually getting out of, specifically Los Angeles County, Alameda County, San Francisco County.
Right.
And the play for them was, interestingly enough, what they referred to as the Sun Belt.
Mm-hmm. And what states are in that Sun Belt?
Well, to me, that means New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada.
Right. Okay.
It might mean Texas, but I usually don't think of the Sun Belt as Texas. I think of that as more like the South.
And because they're in multifamily, is that specific because of the more favorable or optimal landlord-tenant relationship in the law?
Well, you have to understand, we've been dealing with, tenant-centric laws here in California for a very, very long time. So that's nothing new to them.
Yeah.
And many of these people were still investing in California, even with that. But there has been some new developments that I think are making the idea or the capital investment into certain places, specifically Los Angeles and certainly also Alameda and San Francisco, that just make it impossible. And one of them is that tax. And you should tell us about that one, being the tax guy. But, when you go to sell your investment, they're taking like this big chunk.
Yeah, so that's called the mansion tax in Los Angeles County.
But wait a minute, Kent. We're talking about apartment buildings, not mansions. Did we vote in a tax on apartment buildings?
Oh, and it was labeled as subsidizing something good for the population. They don't name bills the mansion tax, right? They name it the support to end homelessness. Right. And you're like, oh, that sounds right. Let me vote for that. So there's some nefarious nature in the way they propose bills. But
think
also
my favorite one was when they tried to repeal the gas tax,
yeah,
and it was the cut off revenue to the government and really special things tax amendment.
right.
It wasn't to repeal the gas tax.
They might as well name it as "Do you like puppies tax?"
Right.
And then you're like, "Yeah, I like puppies. I'm gonna be okay with that."
Let's pass a tax for puppies.
But you're right. The gap in that is that it doesn't just cover single-family large residences. It includes commercial properties. And when you talk about the cost of real estate, not just on a residential level, but now on a commercial level, that number creates an incredible burden on conducting business in the state. And many can say, oh, well, that's just big business, big companies. But you and I both know, right, especially being on the West Coast, that average real estate prices and transactions, that $5 million mark is not very hard to transact in.
No,
And
I mean, what are we talking about? $5 million multifamily residential. It's like what, 25 units?
exactly, right about there.
That's not even the big
Well,
boys.
and it also depends on what part of the city. If you're in LA County, if you get into Santa Monica, if you get into some of the ritzier areas, 5 million could be a 6-unit building.
Yeah.
Right, easy, and that tax on both individuals and companies puts a really big damper on doing business in the state. Which, by the way, we have a whole nother episode covering, crazy laws in California. So anyone that's interested, take a peek at that. Where we kind of go tail by tail or line by line on some of the key interesting ones that we've come across. But that's just one trend, right? The other thing that we see that's combined with this is the housing crisis, right? We think part of leaving California is a part of the cost of living in California, and that's generated by, think about the new minimum wage in fast food, edging up to $20.
Yep.
And some of the controversy surrounding that minimum wage and what that means.
You mean like Gavin Newsom carving out his buddy?
Controversy indeed. If it's a bakery, Panera.
Did you see when they actually hit him really hard? The news hit him really hard
They did.
on it.
Yeah.
And his answer was, "Oh, well, fast food workers are the backbone of," he just completely filibustered. He had no answer for what he had done.
I do believe, though, there's a carve out because of, which is what I love about social media and the pressure, right, that happens on a very immediate basis is politics and politicians are creatures of public sentiment. So because there's negative public sentiment, I think there's some push recently, and we'd have to double check that Panera got carved out to say, no, Panera's going to have to pay tax. Even though
I bet that's
I bet you
definitely
though
on the hopper.
had journalism not been, or the social media outlets have not been on the hunt for this, right, and made this so publicized, this would have been another thing that we call that pork barreling, right, in politics. He just kind of shoved it through, and it was silently administered, just like I said, the mansion tax, which all of a sudden includes commercial properties. That's not a mansion.
And yeah, commercial properties and vacant land.
That's right.
And apartment buildings.
That's right.
And I think what people fail to understand is that when you increase the cost to acquire something, you reduce the supply.
Yep.
And if we're in a housing crisis, we need to increase supply because demand's not going anywhere unless, you listen to the globalists and we start, eliminating the population through starvation and other means. That's, the population is going to continue to increase, and therefore the demand for housing is going to continue to increase. And if you restrict supply, there's only one thing that can happen, and that's that the price increases. And I think the really nefarious thing that people don't understand about just increasing the cost of holding multifamily residential in general, but also things like rent control. Rent control seems like it's something that should help the renter.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask you something. Why is it that in rent-controlled jurisdictions, the rent always goes up?
Because there's, I think, a forced necessity to maximize the worth of holding an investment in that area. So there are actually landlords that we work with that decidedly don't increase their rent because they have a low basis and they're using it to maintain. They're making a good cushion. But when you put in rent control, it feels like it's a use it or lose it.
Yeah.
So
they always have to increase the rent.
exactly.
So there is built-in increases to rent in the law, and it limits you. And they will always, 100% of the time, increase the rent as much as they can. As much as they can. So even if somehow miraculously supply increased to strip out demand, rent's not going down.
Yeah.
Where it should. So you're restricting supply, you're building in price increases, and it sounds utopian that we're going to do this thing to keep landlords from gouging tenants, which is certainly a valid and noble cause, but it's just basic economics that it just doesn't work. I mean, you all know that. It's like Econ 102, where you show institute price control, and then all of a sudden the supply curve flatlines.
Yeah,
and then just as the demand curve moves along, and up goes the price.
So that goes back to our idea that wealth moving out and capital moving out of California has an extreme detrimental effect, because we all know at least if for listeners that don't know, is the majority of the tax in our taxing system is paid by the top 5-10% of the population. And when that capital gets extracted, there's a huge detriment and loss in overall tax bill. And even California even understands this. We know this inherently because in 2023, they put something out on the table called Assembly Bill 259, which is the wealth exit tax. Now, bear with me here. In this proposed bill, they were going to charge individuals who had a business or property in California a 1% to 1.5% tax to leave the state. Now, it's been sitting in a bill and hasn't come out yet. And it was a reaction to the intangible assets and the sale of crypto, and people are doing that outside of the state and trying to preserve that wealth in there. But you can think that kind of tax, just to tax people to say, hey, you're in California. What's that famous line in Hotel California?
You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave.
California's motto should be, you can go, but leave your money here.
It's functionally the equivalent for sure. So let's talk about for a second, all right, well, what is it that's making it untenable to do business in California? From a legal perspective, for landlords, the tenant protections have gotten to be so bad, and it's become so difficult to evict someone that vacancy and collection losses are going through the roof. The worst place that's occurred, according to these people we met with, is actually not in California, believe it or not. It's actually in the state of Washington in Kings County.
Oh, yeah, they're setting the model for us to follow.
Yes. But the next next three counties are all in California. Yeah. Alameda being the worst, specifically Oakland. LA is in second place, and third place San Francisco. So what is going on in Oakland? Well, you have all the same sorts of tenant protections with the just cause ordinance and the rent control and all that they've always had. So there's not really a whole lot more going on in Oakland than any other place, except that the economy has become so poor that tenants are using everything they can to their advantage to stay. And they're also not only having collection loss, but also a vacancy loss, which is really staggering.
Yeah.
And the one thing that they pointed out was that the businesses that have left there recently have just made the place into a almost apocalyptic,
post-apocalyptic. It's just a ghost town.
Like a ghost town. In-N-Out pulled out. In-N-Out has never closed a location ever one time in its existence until that.
Oh, wow.
This is the first time In-N-Out has closed a location, was in Oakland. Walmart pulled out. Walgreens has pulled out. We can go on and on and on.
I heard in the downtown of San Francisco, Nordstrom's pulled out. You have Sephora shuttering its doors. So you have places that used to be epicenters of population to gather because it was a fun place to be, and there's a lot of entertainment and reason to be there. So if we revert back to discussing for a second, because there's always time to live in the now, but history is long, right? And there was at one point an allure to being in California. It seems like the golden age of California, and over time everyone's always said California is at its end, but California seems to always survive. The question I have isn't trying to sit in yesteryear of like why it was better back in the day, because we can always come up with examples of why things are better back in the day. But what I'd like to know is, why are people still here?
Well, there's a lot of reasons people are still here.
Exactly. So
I think first and foremost is that it's still an economic center. It's still a powerhouse. If you want to make money, this is the place to do it. Certainly the weather is unfreaking believable. Now, you know myself, I've left California.
yes,
For the most part. I still practice law here, but physically I try not to be here as much as possible. And it was tough to find a place that I liked to be as much as I do here, and that's primarily because of the weather.
yeah,
Another example is when I went to law school, many of the students who I became friends with were from other places. My best friend was from Chicago. I had another friend who was from New York. I had another friend that was, well, you're from Chicago, so I don't have to tell you that story. And they got here and went to school, and in first year of school, first semester, oh yeah, I'm just going to get my education here, and I'm headed back to Chicago, New York, whatever. By third year, like,
right.
I am not leaving this place. This is beautiful here. I love the weather. It's, we don't freeze our asses off in the winter and all that. So, there's a lot to be said for the state. It's beautiful.
it is.
It's unbelievable.
Then you have to want to have, call it weather and seasons, as folks like to say, in order to want to live in those other places outside of the tax advantage of doing so, or the economic advantage of doing so. I think that part of the allure for me of California is the access to the cultural diversity. Outside of the time I spent in New York, which also has extreme diversity, and I'm a foodie, right?
Right.
Which is why I don't have a six pack. I love tastiness over abs.
I'll challenge you on something there, though.
What's that?
Food in Dallas is better.
I disagree.
I'm sorry.
I
Food scene in
disagree.
Dallas is way better than it is.
The scene in Dallas is better than Los Angeles.
Yes.
All right, we're gonna
The
have
rest
to.
of the food there, in Dallas, you look at the whole urban sprawl. You got any little neighborhood, and any little neighborhood has got a dozen or so restaurants that you would just die to eat at. They're just amazing. Where, sure, we've got some cool stuff in Beverly Hills. Yeah, West Hollywood's really awesome. Sure, we got a lot of cool stuff here in our little Japanese villa here in Torrance. And well, if you want some dim sum, you can head out to Alhambra. But that's one way spread out, and it's very, very focused and very localized. It's not like every neighborhood has really good restaurants. Where I lived in the Valley for years, it sucked. I mean, the food scene was horrible.
So
You had to go down to Sherman Oaks, or you had to go to Studio
True,
City,
John.
which was, an hour
But
on the
that's-
freeways here.
But John, that's the beauty. The beauty of having this spread out is because when you do that, you have, we call it Epicurean clarity and focus. Meaning, you don't go to San Gabriel Valley and be like, "Hey, there's a good Ethiopian place out there." No, you're gonna get some awesome Asian food, and you don't go to other parts of the city, Little Ethiopia, and be like, "You know what? Filipino food here is awesome."
Well,
So
I agree, but
Well, I
think
think it's
about what's it take? What does it take to go to Pasadena to eat Chinese? An hour and a half commitment each way on our flipping freeways,
in the voyage of
which is another one of the reasons it sucks here is because of the traffic.
John, the journey for culinary purity, I think, is worth it. You go to these
But you're not
different
gonna do that every
pockets. You know what? See, Dallas is like a carousel of the biggest hits. When your favorite record used to come out, did you just buy the one that has like
you
the
gotta,
biggest
I
hits
gotta
on the
take you to
record?
Dallas and take you to some places, dude.
Here's what I propose. You ever watch a show called Somebody Feed Phil?
No, I have not.
Has anyone else watched that out there? Everyone that hasn't, watch it. It's a cool, call it Netflix. or is it it's on Apple TV or one of those subscriptions. And it's this gentleman named Phil, average Joe, but they take him places, and he has really wild expressions, and he just eats food and says stuff about him. What we'll do is we'll do a competitive food tour. We'll go culinary, for the diversity. We'll pick some genres and figure out the hits that we can find in LA. Granted, it'll take longer, but maybe in Dallas, somebody just put it on one block. But you know what? One block's too easy, John. I want to sweat before I get to the food. And you know what? There's something to be said when you show up to a joint and there's a line around a corner, and you're like, what is that about? Not like Instagram famous, but like it's been
There's
OG
places
around the
like
corner.
that all around Dallas, my friend.
But have they been there for the length of time the culinary excellence has been here in
Well,
LA?
my favorite barbecue joint in Dallas.
Oh, okay, hold on.
Was
We have to
actually
scrap barbecue.
started in 1911.
Okay, you have to take barbecue off the table. I will admit,
It's
barbecue.
the original building in 1911.
In all of Texas, fine barbecue will kick the pants off anything in LA. But I'm talking about the diversity of food, right?
I think you will be shocked.
Okay, I'd love to take that. So that's part of being in LA, though, or being in California, is I think the access to those things. You talk about the people
I
in our
just want to
team.
say I honestly think that my food experience here in California is disappointing for what it should be.
Are you insinuating the idea that the Michelin star hadn't come back to California for
Well, how
such
about
a
never
period?
was, and when the ones that were are gone?
It's back.
We've
though.
had 2 Michelin star restaurants closed in the last month.
But you and I went to a couple of Michelin star restaurants in the not so distant past. One where, by the way, John so brazenly walked in, he made a reservation for an entirely different week, but we showed up and he was like, "Sir, I'm to be seated." And
I was not like that at all.
that's true. You were very cordial about it. But we got seated for a Michelin star restaurant, which we didn't even have a reservation
Yes,
for.
and they proceeded to fleece us for almost $3,000. So I would imagine that they would find room for us.
Agreed. Although everyone was fleeced for the same amount.
I agree.
And this was for the sake of science.
This is true. It was amazing, though.
It was excellent. It was excellent. But do you have that experience in Dallas?
There's Michelin star restaurants.
But the breadth and depth of Michelin star restaurants, even
We
during
don't have that many Michelin star restaurants here,
even
my
during the
friend.
pandemic, Michelin star restaurants in LA.
Compared to Paris or compared to New York,
Let's
compared
say-
to
let's-
the East Coast in general, we do not have that many Michelin starred restaurants, and there's very few 3 stars.
No,
They're mostly 1 and 2.
I agree.
You want to go up to Napa and we can hang out there. There's some Michelin star restaurants, French Laundry. Virtually every one of Thomas Heller's restaurants are all Michelin starred.
Correct.
Now they're all in Napa.
That's true.
So
That's true.
let's go there, and you can hit more Michelin star restaurants with a stone in Napa than you can hit in this whole bleeding county.
But that is one aspect, John. So take
Well, I'm
culinary
just saying,
excellence.
I don't think the
take
food's all that great.
take weather. Right?
Weather, okay.
Take
Weather, you can't beat it
take.
unless you go to Hawaii.
That's true. and then take the ability of biodiversity. California is one of the few places I could be knee deep in skis at Big Bear in the morning and then be down toes in the sand by the afternoon. But the whole point is the beach, John. It's like, I have an ocean view
all right.
past the dumpster.
You're totally right, except you're going to put your toes in the sand here and maybe hit a hypodermic needle or a razor.
You just got to go.
Or you're going to have a bacterial overload and get AIDS or something. Or
Now-
some other disease.
You just have to go further south in Venice. Once you pass the Venice no man's land, the Mad Max line of Venice, it definitely starts to get greener.
There's some pretty nasty shit on the beach in Redondo.
There's
And by the way, everyone knows you don't go in the ocean for 5 days after it rains. So it's not exactly all that awesome.
as pristine. But we're talking about the coast. California is an extremely large.
It's a nice view.
Large state, a nice view, and there's a lot
Unless
to be
you're
said.
a surfer and sort of crazy, I wouldn't get in the water.
Hold on, back up. You used to be
And
in the water all the time.
Well, yeah, diving used to be awesome here till the kelp forest died.
I see.
All the abalone went away.
So one of the reasons why folks are leaving, the reduction of biodiversity.
Okay,
Okay.
I'll take that.
So
I think the real honest reason people are leaving has nothing to do with the geography.
mhm.
I think it has everything to do with the laws.
I agree.
And I think the reason for that is twofold. One is it gets so difficult to do business that it becomes practically impossible.
That's right.
And I also think that because of the lax criminal standards and the ideas of the people who are now in charge of enforcing the law, that criminality in terms of petty crimes and quality of life crimes has gone off the charts.
That's right.
And that's why Walmart left. It's not because they weren't making sales.
Yeah.
In-N-Out it wasn't because they didn't have a line. In-N-Out's always got a line. They had a line around the block like every In-N-Out on the planet. And the reason they left was because their employees were being mugged on a regular basis. They couldn't keep their employees safe, and they couldn't keep their customers safe. That's insane.
That is. It is quite. It's quite unfathomable. You think in America or California, regardless.
Well, it's a civilized place in general.
Exactly. You think that this is a place that is under, without rule of law, in some of these jurisdictions. And there was a recent time where our neighbor needed to call 911. There was a time in Hollywood, there was an individual homeless person that was sharpening a machete on a neighbor's staircase. So like they just had an open machete. And you can hear the scraping of this machete against the staircase at like 9 at night. You call the police, and the police go, all right, we'll be out. But by the way, before you call 911, wait on hold. Hold, please. 20 minutes later, this is 911, not the non-emergency line. Hey, what is your emergency? There's a person sharpening a machete, and basically they're trying to figure out, are there bodies piling up, which apparently is like stage 1, and then since there's not blood,
there's no bodies, we'll get there in a bit.
Since there's not blood and gore, right? Oh, we'll have a unit out. And after about 40 minutes, no unit showed up. Individuals still causing havoc or scaring the populace. It turns out that one of the neighbors was part of not a neighborhood watch, but a neighborhood community where there was outreach from the local chief of police. So they had a direct contact to a police officer contact. So they had to call that person personally and say, hey, we're on this board and we're living here, and there's a person out there. And whether it's a coincidence or not, patrol car popped up, shooed the person away. But by the way, just shoo.
Politics.
And the fact that apparently I learned that the act of carrying a machete is not illegal. Using it and wielding it as a weapon is illegal. So since he didn't swing it at anybody, he was just mentally unstable, sharpening it on a staircase. The fact of carrying it, apparently, we were told, was not a crime in and of itself. And so therefore, the problem was solved. When the problem
actually untrue.
Oh,
the cops just told you that to make you go away.
Got it. Well, then the other piece is, what is just a civil person's recourse? Sue the city?
Well, there is no recourse.
Exactly.
I mean, I'll share with you a personal experience that I had, and it was surrounded the time that I decided to leave. This is pre-COVID.
Yep.
I was driving to work, and my office was in Koreatown, and there was I would assume just homeless, probably, who knows, certainly very mentally ill individual.
Mm-hmm.
And this is next to a school. This is within a block of an elementary school. Had removed all his clothing and was doing the very base thing that men do with their genitals in 10 o'clock in the morning. And I saw that, and I was shocked by it, of course. And I drove a couple blocks, and I was getting ready to call the police. And I actually saw a police cruiser, and I actually stopped. And I got the attention of the police officers, and they said, "Oh, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll take right care of it." Well, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see this go down. And I'm thinking they're going to, hogtie this guy, right?
Yeah.
They drove by him, still doing his thing.
Yeah.
Rolled down the window and yelled at him, "Pull up your goddamn pants," and drove off.
Oh, that's
what they did.
That's amazing.
That's what they did. Now, I'll contrast this to what occurred to me some couple years later after I had left. There was a gentleman in a car who was yelling and screaming at anyone who would look at him. I mean, he was completely, I don't know what that is when they do enough meth and they're just like flipped out of their mind, right?
Drug-induced schizophrenia.
At first, I actually thought he was trying to have a problem with me.
Yeah.
Because he was like looking right at me, and I realized, oh, he's having enough experience here in Los Angeles. I realized he's cursing the sky, as it were. And I walk in the grocery store, and sure enough, there's a police officer. And I, hey, there's this guy over there, and I just thought you ought to know what he's up to. Go in the grocery store, buy my 6-pack of beer or whatever, come out, and there's 2 cruisers now, and they got the guy hog-tied face down out of his car. Little difference in how they treated something. I mean, think about it. It's actually considerably more minor to just be in your car shouting at people than to be buck naked on the street.
I think the idea of looking at criminality and as a casual observer, seeing what we call instant karma or justice being served are anecdotes. Now, we're probably glossing over some other structural issues within the policing community, the political issues between having our sheriff, the DA, a number of things that are politically motivated in terms of how local police act and react. And I think there are a lot of law enforcement that want to do the right thing or instructed not to do so.
Oh, I don't think the problem's with the actual police officers at all. I think it all has to do with politics. And I think it's unfortunate and it's sad. And I know I'm familiar with the philosophies and I understand the arguments for systemic injustice. And I understand that, some of that's right. And, honestly, I've never been a fan of the police. I really haven't. I've always been, I don't want to say anti-police, but I've always had a very dim view of the police in general. I've always felt that many police officers were the guys who got C's in school, and they weren't particularly well educated, and they're kind of bullies. And I've been bullied by the police myself.
So
I'm not a big fan of the police, but I am a fan of law and order, and we can't
So you're also a fan of NWA then?
Well, I wasn't when I was a youth.
Tells me a lot. In contrast, though, I am a fan of law enforcement in terms of what they do for society, and maybe because I see them through a different light. A lot of law enforcement individuals for the varying agencies happen to be clients over the years, and I find law enforcement individuals are dedicated. They're very entrepreneurial. Almost every law enforcement person that I came into contact always had something going on. They're like,
oh, I would agree.
Selling knives or opening stores on the side.
They're very, very good people. I'm not saying that they're not good people.
Yeah, of course.
But what I'm saying is that I'm not personally in my experience through life, I've been bullied by the police, and I've had a dim view of them oftentimes as being bullies and kind of bloggarts and, blockheads. And so it's my distaste for what's happening now doesn't stem from a, rah love of the police, all that business. But it's so clear.
Yeah.
Anyone with a brain should be able to see that if you do not enforce the laws, if you do not punish crime, if you do not put dangerous people in prison, and you just make this revolving door, there's no bail, all this crazy stuff, that society is going to fail.
So as humans, we are extremely adaptable, right? Science and the history has told us that we wouldn't have survived this long if we didn't have the ability to adapt. So we're here in California. Think of it as climate change on an economic and political level. How do we adapt to this? Because California, I would love it if everyone left that had a twinge of wanting to leave. But there's a reason we covered that people are staying, right? For economic reasons, for societal reasons.
We wouldn't be in much of a business, my friend. So we don't want that.
That's true, but we would have the coast to ourselves. And we all work and save and put away so that we can have access to the view, as you say, and access to that. If we just had unfettered access to that, why would you work? There'd be no need. You'd have unlimited resources.
You still have to eat.
Again, if everyone left, you have access to unlimited resources here. Now that's in a.
Now you get into this kind of fantastical zombie apocalypse.
We're in a post-apocalyptic nirvana of everyone leaving California. Don't get me wrong. I've thought this through in my interesting days. A few more tiki drinks in, and I'll tell you the whole story.
Okay.
But in terms of adaptation strategies, what I'd love to cover later in this conversation in two parts. One is to advise listeners and how we advise clients on the right way to leave California. California is one of the jurisdictions that is really what we call sticky, that wants to extract the most amount of funds from leaving. In fact, when I advise clients and they have a bill to pay, like a tax bill, to the IRS in California, the first thing out of my mouth is, you better pay California first. And here is a keen example. There's a client that owes the government, IRS, and state of California quite a sum of money, and the actions of each governmental agency are distinct and highlight my point. The IRS sends a nice letter that says, we're going to put a tax lien on your property, a home, and you're familiar with tax liens on your primary residence. And they get notice after notice, and they say, please come and talk to us and negotiate, fill out the 433A, create a offer in compromise, all these things. And the next step after that would be garnishment of wages and things that we'll call protocol. California, the same client, receives a notice and says,
Or your bank account's frozen.
Your bank account is frozen. And that notice comes from their bank and says, the FDB has frozen your assets.
And they just took all your money.
Yeah. Please call when convenient. And so the aggressiveness of the state is one of the reasons why, we advise they're not to be underestimated. But in the conversation of adaptation and being humans in this world and how we adapt and how we provide advice to professionals, to our client base, what are some of your thoughts on how individuals can find new opportunities to want to survive in California?
I mean, one of the things that I've focused on with my clients, because I get this a lot, especially with the new laws that we had come down this year. The first reaction is, God damn it, I'm leaving this state. I've had enough of it. Mm-hmm. And, well, one of them is a guy who's in a lot of multifamily residential, and he's a smaller landlord, and, the vacancy and collection loss is killing him. Well, my advice to him is, there's nothing wrong with commercial. Mm-hmm. There's things we can do, like self-storage, for instance, where, if they don't pay you, you just cut the locks and take their shit. That's pretty easy.
Yeah.
So there's other business models that you can move into that are more friendly and more carved out. It's tough having employees in California. There's not much you can do to get around that other than just dot your I's, cross your T's, make sure you've got a good employee handbook, know that there's all these things that you have to do. And, if you need to fire somebody or you have a situation, you should have a good employment lawyer that's looking it over and seeing how it is that you resolve the situation. So there's a lot of extra regulatory hurdles, but it can be done. And you don't have to run and leave the state, although I actually think there's better places to live.
Well, if you have a successful business, what I'm hearing and synthesizing from your message is hire the right professional, the right lawyer, and the right attorney.
Yep.
And it could be here at Tacsis.
And the right tax guy, too, because, taxes are high here in California, but Kent never met a tax he couldn't beat.
Not a model. There's definitely taxes to plan around. And one of the sayings that I'd like to always sometimes say, either I don't think I generated it myself, I'm not that ingenious, but what I'll tell folks is the difference between tax planning and tax evasion is when you talk to your accountant. If you do it before, that's tax planning. Tax evasion's a no-no. So when the clients come in, they ask, well, this is what I did. How do I deduct that? And
there's an absolute identical parallel in the law.
Sure.
The difference between asset protection and a fraudulent transfer is timing.
I love it.
If we protect your assets before you have a problem, that's just asset protection, and there's nothing wrong with it. If you have a problem and then you come to me and say, I want to hide all my assets, forget about it. It's too late.
Which is an awesome segue into how I want to provide some very high-level advisory for our listeners who are planning to leave California. in talking about the stickiness of the state and their willingness to pursue assets. One of it is asset planning. Right? One of the key notions is if possible, don't have your home in California, don't have real estate here in California, and then don't keep your stuff here in California. Like you have a huge art collection, you're a collector of cars, don't have significant assets in California, in the state of California. And then also some folks get what we call FOMO. So FOMO in a recent, we'll call it an example, is when your company moves out of state, you move and you're like, screw it, I love it. Here in Texas, I could buy a house for $500,000. In California, I bought a shed. And then you get there and you're like, oh, I don't like bugs and the heat, and I'm going to come back. So you move there and you come back. That is sometimes a faux pas.
My sister-in-law lost her shirt doing that.
So there's a good example that you have personally. The also key part is we talk about timing is do not, and I repeat, do not move in the same year of an asset transaction. Pre-planning is essential in this. When clients go, I'm going to have a QSBS exit. Congratulations. How do I not pay California tax? When is it going to happen?
Too late.
This year. Too late, sir. Too late. And so that piece of it is that piece of advisory. It surrounds planning and, again, having the right professionals on your team and having the right conversations at the right time. And I think there's an optimal way to both leave California, but also there's an optimal way to rebuild your business around, the benefits of being in California and the business opportunity in California. And some of the optimal ways is build your revenue and wealth in the economics of California, but live and pay the more optimal taxes in other parts of the country. So if those who are fortunate enough to build significant enough businesses and take and utilize their opportunities here in California and be able to have those dollars stretch, I think retirement is in fact sometimes better in California for the right person, because remember, your tax rate in retirement typically is lower, and you can retire here. A lot of misnomers that I must retire somewhere else. But if you have a really successful business, like the clients that we tend to serve are, California with the right structure could be a good place to retire because the income tax impact is much lower.
I think one of the things that people misunderstand, and I didn't really understand this myself fully until I left the state. Holy moly. You want to talk about saving money living someplace else. The insurance is an order of magnitude less.
Yeah.
Why? Because you're not in a litigious place where you're getting sued for everything all the time. So the insurance companies are willing to provide insurance at a lot less. The utilities are practically free. Mm-hmm. The property tax is almost non-existent compared to what it is here.
Yeah.
Yeah. At one point in California, I was paying $17,000 a year in property taxes. I pay less than $1,700 a year now.
Substantially different.
Well, yeah, a big difference. Yeah. So look at all the other things you get. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But you got bugs and it's really humid. That's Texas, though. I don't care for Texas myself.
Pros and cons, but apparently you love the barbecue. We'll still go on that food journey.
There's no better brisket I've ever had on the planet other than in Texas, and mine's a second to that.
That I don't disagree. So with that, to all our listeners, I just want to say thank you for listening and joining us on this food and curiosity journey. We are enjoying our tiki drinks tonight. So if you guys liked what we talked about, please like and subscribe. We'd love to hear from every one of you. Links will be down below. And if you have your stories about leaving California or coming to California, we definitely want to hear about them. So thanks for joining us. Until next time.